Within each of us lies a place untouched by external turmoil, a fortress Marcus Aurelius described as the only refuge impervious to chaos. This inner core isn't defined by titles, wealth, or the approval of others. It is instead the authentic self, the bedrock of our true character. Yet most spend their lives disconnected from this essential center, pushed and pulled by praise and criticism, success and failure. As Epictetus observed, they are not truly living, they are merely reacting, continually at the mercy of circumstance rather than guided by inner clarity. Stoicism invites us to reclaim this inner stronghold. It teaches not withdrawal from life but mastery over how we engage with it. Seneca reminds us that while external events lie beyond our control, our judgments and reactions remain firmly within our grasp. The Stoic ideal is not cold detachment, but a disciplined clarity that remains steady despite the world's storms. It is this deliberate choice, responding rather than merely reacting, that safeguards our peace and preserves our identity. Philosopher Michel de Montaigne noted, "The greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself." This self-belonging, the heart of Stoicism, is continually challenged. The modern world seeks to stretch our identities thin between who we truly are and who others demand us to be, tempting us to exchange authenticity for acceptance. But Stoicism insists that the price of losing oneself for temporary gain is never worth paying. By nurturing our inner world, grounding ourselves in steadfast principles, and relentlessly aligning our actions with our deepest truths, we become unshakable. This Stoic discipline empowers us not to conquer the world, but to ensure the world never conquers us, remaining whole no matter how fierce the winds rage around us. Chapter 1. Who are you when no one is watching? You strip away your job, your titles, your accolades, and even your possessions. What remains? This is the question at the heart of Stoic self-examination. In a world that so eagerly attaches value to status and achievement, we risk mistaking these externals for the self. Seneca warned that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality, and nowhere is this more true than in our internal narratives about who we are. If your identity depends wholly on roles and rewards, then when those roles shift or rewards vanish, your sense of self will crumble. Removing external identities, begin by mentally setting aside everything you use to define yourself. Job titles, degrees, social media, likes, even family roles. Consider them as clothes you can hang up. Epictetus taught that our freedom lies in recognizing what is within our control, our judgments and choices, versus what is not, external circumstances. By detaching your sense of worth from externals, you reclaim ownership of your inner life. This is not an exercise in self-denial, but a deliberate act of clarification, to discover the subject beneath the predicates. Essence versus roles are transient. One day you are manager, the next day you may be unemployed, yet the core of your character, the values you hold, the intentions you set can remain constant. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one." This injunction is aimed not at philosophical abstraction, but at lived integrity. Your essence is revealed not in public ceremonies, but in private routines and quiet commitments. Character revealed in solitude when no one watches, your habits show their true face. Do you honor your commitments when there is no audience? Do you extend kindness when no favor will be returned? Do you allow self-compassion or settle for harsh self-criticism? Thoreau observed that the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation, driven by anxiety over others' opinions rather than rooted in self-knowledge. The Stoic counteracts this desperation by practicing integrity in solitude, choosing right action even when invisible, aligning public and private selves. The Stoic aspires to unity between inner convictions and outward behavior. Imagine two concentric circles. The inner circle represents your private self, your beliefs, your unspoken promises to yourself, while the outer circle is your public persona. When those circles diverge, psychological tension grows. As Seneca put it, No man can have a peaceful life who thinks too much about length and neglects the present moment. If you expend energy maintaining appearances, you sacrifice presence and peace. By aligning private discipline with public action, you eliminate that dissonance. Integrity over convenience. It is easier to postpone exercise, to tell a small lie, or to indulge in a craving when the stakes feel low. Yet each concession chips away at self-trust. Epictetus taught that the essence of good life is right desire and right aversion, to want what is truly good and to reject what is harmful. Upholding integrity in modest moments builds the muscle for bigger trials. Refusal to compromise authenticity. Conformity may smooth social interactions, but at the cost of authenticity. Kierkegaard warned that the greatest hazard of all, losing oneself, can occur very quietly in the world, as if it were nothing at all. Each time you yield your private standards for external gain, you risk forgetting who you pledged to become. The Stoic resist this slow erosion by rehearsing small acts of authenticity daily. Self-reflection as a Stoic practice. Reflection is not self-flagellation, it is gentle calibration. At day's end, ask, did I lie to myself or others? 2. Did I act from fear or from principle? Did I uphold commitments made in solitude? Did I cultivate self-compassion or self-judgment? This soul audit transforms experience into wisdom. Write down the raw truth, not the polished narrative. Marcus Aurelius kept his journal not to boast of his virtue, but to remind himself of his failings and to chart a path forward. By recording both moments of courage and moments of weakness, you produce a map of your becoming, not a mask for your reputation. Practical exercises. Morning. Anchoring. Before leaving bed, close your eyes and ask, who am I today, independent of titles or outcomes? Midday check-in. Pause midday for 1 minute of silence. Notice whether your actions align with your morning intention. Evening audit. Spend 5 minutes journaling one example of integrity and solitude and one moment you compromised. Frame both neutrally as data points for growth. Over time, these practices build self-alignment into reflex, making the question, who are you when no one is watching, not a source of anxiety, but a gateway to genuine peace. By rooting identity in character rather than circumstance, you cultivate an inner fortress no storm can touch. Chapter 2. Staying still in the storm. Facing uncertainty. Life's seasons bring upheaval, a sudden layoff, a health scare, a broken relationship, shifting political or economic landscapes. These external storms feel like they shake every foundation. Yet, as Seneca observed, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Much of our distress comes not from the events themselves, but from how we anticipate them or cling to the illusion of permanence. The Stoic does not pretend that life will be smooth. Instead, they prepare to meet instability with composure. Recognizing that uncertainty is not an aberration, but an intrinsic feature of existence liberates us from false expectations. Cultivating internal peace. Peace is not a reward at the end of crisis. It is a practice cultivated moment by moment. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you have power over your mind and not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This power lies in the space between stimulus and response, where our reason resides. When external chaos erupts, the Stoic turns inward, breathing into that space and reaffirming their sovereignty. Internal peace arises from intentionally choosing calm judgment over reactive turmoil, from aligning one's perspective with values rather than fears. Shift from reaction to reflection. Reaction is impulsive and fueled by emotion. Reflection is deliberate and guided by principle. Epictetus taught that people are disturbed not by things themselves, but by their judgments about them. When bad news arrives, our first instinct might be panic or self-pity. The Stoic trains to pause, however briefly, to ask, what is within my control here? How can I respond in alignment with my values? This pause interrupts the cycle of fear and allows reflection. Over time, That intentional breath becomes the bridge from chaos to clarity. Anchoring practices to sustain calm under pressure. Establish concrete rituals that automatically guide you back to center. Examples include grounding breath. Inhale for 4 counts. Hold for 1. Exhale for 6 counts. Repeat until tension subsides. Mindful observation. Notice 3 details in your environment: texture, color, sound, to anchor attention in the ID, present. Stoic reminder. Carry a written prompt, "What can I control?" to glance at when anxiety arises. These practices are not escapes but acts of engagement. They root you in the present rather than in imagined catastrophes. By rehearsing them during calm periods, you ensure they are available when storms hit. Choosing internal stability. Stoicism teaches that our serenity depends not on the steadiness of circumstances, but on the steadiness of our own minds. Seneca urged, "He is most powerful who has himself in his own power." This self-mastery means investing our energy in what endures, our own thoughts, judgments, and intentions, rather than in what we cannot command. When relationships fracture or markets crash, the Stoic does not seek guarantees from external sources. Instead, they look inward for unshakable ground. Practical application. Morning preparation. Begin each day with a brief meditation on potential uncertainties. Imagine a challenge, traffic, a difficult conversation, a missed deadline, and rehearse responding with patience and clarity. Midday, reset. Pause once during the day to scan your emotional state. If restlessness or worry is present, employ a grounding practice before proceeding. Evening reflection. Journal one instance where you remained calm in the face of difficulty and one area where you reacted prematurely. Identify a lesson to carry forward. Stoic perspective on adversity. Adversity is unavoidable, but internal adversity, panic, bitterness, despair, is optional. Viktor Frankl, drawing on his experience in concentration camps, wrote that between stimulus and response lies our freedom, the freedom to choose one's attitude. This echoes the Stoic conviction that external hardships need not corrupt inner dignity. When a strong wind bends the tree, it does not break. It yields and then straightens once the gust subsides. Similarly, the Stoic mind bends to circumstances, but does not fracture, rooted in principle rather than circumstance. Building resilience. Over time, resilience is not innate but forged through repeated practice. Each time you return to calm in the midst of chaos, you strengthen your capacity to do so again. The first time you apply a grounding breath under stress, it may feel awkward or inadequate. But as you persist, day after day, storm after storm, what once was a deliberate act becomes instinctive. Your internal fortress grows stronger not in spite of adversity but because of it, each trial serving as a test and a teacher. Staying still in the storm does not mean fleeing reality or denying pain. It means anchoring your awareness in what you can govern, your own mind. By shifting from reaction to reflection, rehearsing anchoring practices, and choosing internal stability over external assurances, the Stoic remains unshaken. The world may try to pull you apart, but from this inner fortress you can meet every challenge with composure, clarity, and unyielding presence. Ultimately, the calm you cultivate within becomes the peace you carry into every storm. Chapter 3. The danger of becoming who they want. Every smile you fake, every belief you hide, every dream you shrink to accommodate another's comfort chips away at your authenticity. At first, such compromises seem trivial, a social lubricant, a pragmatic concession. But as Søren Kierkegaard warned, the greatest hazard of all, losing oneself, can occur very quietly in the world as if it were nothing at all. Small concessions accumulate until your true self lies buried beneath layers of performed roles. Subtle self-erosion. It begins innocently. You soften your opinions in a meeting to avoid tension. You feign enthusiasm for a project you secretly detest. You adjust your priorities to match your friends' expectations. You tell yourself it's strategic, that you're being agreeable. Yet each concession teaches your mind that approval is more valuable than authenticity. Over time, the voice that once spoke from conviction grows faint, drowned out by the echo of applause you've learned to crave. Epictetus taught that we suffer not from events themselves, but from our judgments about them. When you judge your true preferences as unworthy of expression, you suffer a deeper wound, the fracture of your own integrity. You begin to see yourself through the lens of others' expectations rather than your own values, losing the compass that once guided you. Authenticity versus acceptance. The Stoic recognizes the human need to belong but refuses to let that need override one's nature. Belonging earned by bending your soul to fit someone else's mold is a hollow victory. Philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson captured this when he declared, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." True acceptance, not the illusory kind bought by conformity, emerges only when you stand firmly in your own truth, even if you stand alone. Conformity may smooth social interactions temporarily, but at the cost of genuine connection. When you present a facade tailored to others' desires, relationships grow shallow. True intimacy demands showing up vulnerably, revealing both strengths and flaws. The Stoic knows that honesty often repels those unprepared for raw authenticity, but attracts those who resonate with your genuine self. Integrity. Over popularity is fickle. Integrity endures. When you repeatedly choose convenience over conviction, you teach your mind to prioritize external validation. Seneca reminds, "Usmid is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." By craving approval at the expense of authenticity, you impoverish your inner life. Living with integrity means saying no when your values say no, even if it means losing favor. It means refusing to join in gossip, even if it cements social bonds. It means speaking up when you see injustice, even if your voice shakes. Each act of authenticity strengthens your inner fortress, making you less vulnerable to the whims of external opinion. Self-respect and authenticity. Authenticity builds self-respect. When you honor your convictions in private and in public, you develop unshakable self-trust. Epictetus taught that our judgments about ourselves are the only judgments that truly matter. If you silently forgive your own compromises, if you excuse your own ethical lapses, you undermine the possibility of genuine self-esteem. In contrast, each time you align action with principle, you plant a seed of self-respect that grows into resilience. Consequences of living for approval. What happens when you become who others want you to be? You wake up one day to find a stranger in the mirror. That person, polished, agreeable, carefully edited, bears little resemblance to the self you once knew. The applause you once sought rings hollow because you realize no one is applauding the real you. Worse, you begin to doubt whether you even know who you are. Kierkegaard's insight resonates here. The loss of self can be imperceptible, yet catastrophic. When you orient your values around external scripts, your inner values, the ones that brought purpose and meaning, fade into the background. You drift through life, an actor reciting lines written by others, yearning for a role that feels authentic, but no longer recognizing the author of your own script. Living honestly to counter. This erosion, the Stoic cultivates radical honesty, not just in speech but in action and in silence. Radical honesty means pausing before you conform and asking, does this choice reflect my values or theirs? It means risking rejection by speaking your truth, trusting that those who matter will respect you more for your authenticity than for your compliance. Practical exercises reinforce this discipline. Boundary practice. Identify one situation this week where you feel inclined to yield. Instead, assert your true preference, however gently. Notice the outcome and how you feel afterward. Mirror. Question. Each morning, look into a mirror and ask, whose voice am I speaking with today, theirs or mine? Use the answer to guide your choices. Authenticity. Journal. At day's end, write one moment when you were fully yourself, and one when you compromised. Reflect on the emotional cost and vow a small correction in tomorrow's similar moment. Consequences versus courage, authenticity often feels risky. Social bonds may strain. Opportunities may slip away. Yet the true cost lies not in immediate loss, but in the gradual surrender of self. The Stoic embraces courage, the internal conviction that living truthfully is more valuable than any external reward. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." By consistently choosing integrity, you reclaim authorship of your own life. You become an individual, not an echo, a soul, not a script. In doing so, you transform each relationship from a performance into an exchange of genuine presence. You replace the hollow applause of conformity with the profound resonance of authenticity. In the end, the world may call for masks, but the Stoic answers with a clear face. In the quiet moments of solitude, you stand unmasked and unbent, anchored in the truth of who you are. That steadfast authenticity becomes not just your shield against the winds of expectation, but your invitation to others to be themselves. For in revealing your genuine self, you give others permission to reclaim theirs. Chapter 4. Don't negotiate with your principles. Values and preferences may look alike on the surface, but their moral weight differs profoundly. A preference bends when pressure mounts, like choosing coffee over tea or wearing black instead of gray. A principle, however, stands firm regardless of convenience or consequence. Seneca cautioned that it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor. If you treat a principle as a mere preference, craving approval or comfort will swiftly erode it, leaving you impoverished in character. Principles versus preferences. To discern principle from preference, observe your behavior under stress. Do you skip your personal writing practice when deadlines loom at work? Do you tell a small falsehood to smooth over an uncomfortable conversation? If so, you've deemed self-discipline or honesty negotiable, a preference rather than a guiding imperative. In contrast, a principle is non-negotiable. You uphold it even when it costs you something. Epictetus taught that we should desire only what is up to us, our own judgments, and be indifferent toward what lies beyond our control. When your priority list places externals, comfort, popularity above internals, integrity, courage, you trade freedom for illusion. Negotiating away a principle invites internal chaos, because every later choice becomes a concession, an incremental loss of self. Seneca on time and integrity, Seneca's famous admonition, "We are always complaining that our days are few and acting as though there would be no end of them," applies equally to our moral fiber. Time spent rationalizing a compromise is time wasted in self-betrayal. Each concession corrodes self-respect. Each rationalization deepens the wound. When you sacrifice integrity for expedience, every moment thereafter is shadowed by the awareness of what you surrendered. Compromise versus character. Compromise can look virtuous. After all, we praise those who meet halfway in policy or partnership. Yet compromising on character is not noble. It is capitulation. Cicero, though not a Stoic, echoed this truth in declaring that if you have a garden and a library, you have everything you need. The garden symbolizes cultivation of the inner self, the library, the wisdom that guides action. Without tending your garden, you risk letting weeds of expedience suffocate your integrity. Clarifying your non-negotiables. Identify core principles. List the truths you will not bend: honesty, loyalty, responsibility to your word, respect for human dignity. These are your pillars. Define boundaries. Translate each principle into actionable boundaries. For honesty, no misleading omissions in conversation. For loyalty, no gossip about close confidants. Write them down. Commit these non-negotiables to paper. The act of writing sharpens them into clear edges that can cut through confusion. Kant's categorical imperative: which demands acting only on maxims you would will to become universal law, provides a philosophical test. If you would not want everyone to lie in similar circumstances, then lying in your own is a contradiction of principle, not a clever adaptation. Rehearsing integrity, principles must become reflexes. Just as a musician practices scales until finger movement is automatic, you must rehearse principled choices until they occur, without deliberation. Scenario. Drill. Identify situations where you're tempted to negotiate. Late fees, white lies, cutting corners. Mentally rehearse the principled response. Role play with yourself. In quiet, say aloud the boundary you'll uphold. Feel the firmness in your tone. Micro-actions. Uphold small principles constantly. A refund you know a cashier forgot to offer, returning found money, speaking up against an unfair remark. These micro-actions train you to respond from principle in the heat of bigger trials. Integrity. Under pressure when stakes rise, at work, in relationships, with finances, pressure tests your commitments. The Stoic does not abandon principles but adjusts strategy. If negotiation with an unethical demand is impossible, the Stoic seeks alternative paths. Honest persuasion, polite refusal, or even exit. Viktor Frankl, in his reflections on finding meaning under Nazi persecution, wrote that, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. When external coercion threatens your compass, you can still choose your response. That choice, no matter how narrow the margin, is where your integrity resides." The cumulative cost of small concessions. Consider a ledger of your moral account. Each small concession debits self-respect. Each principled stand credits it. The problem is that minor debits often go unnoticed in the moment, yet they accumulate interest, impoverishing the spirit over time. Meanwhile, principled actions often yield no immediate reward, yet their credit compounds quietly into a robust sense of self. Aristotle, though not a Stoic, observed that excellence is a habit formed by consistent action. Habits of integrity form a character that stands firm. Habits of compromise form a foundation that cracks under pressure. Living your legacy, your lasting legacy, isn't made of applause, but of unshaken principles. At life's end, the Stoic does not regret missed comforts or lost convenience, but the moments they might have betrayed themselves. Seneca advised, "Begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life." Each day is an opportunity to honor your non-negotiables, to reinforce the boundaries that give shape to your character. Practical exercise. The Principle Pledge. Morning affirmation. Read your written list of non-negotiables aloud. Midday. Check. In moments of uncertainty, ask, which principle guides me now? 3. Evening audit. Record one instance you upheld a principle and one moment you flirted with compromise. No shame, only clarity. Over weeks and months, this cycle ingrains principles deep into your psyche. Compromise becomes painful, integrity becomes instinctive. When every situation tests you, your prepared principles become your compass. You will not rise to the level of your intentions. You will fall to the level of your training. By embedding your principles into daily practice, you ensure that, under pressure or in peace, your moral bearings remain true. In this unwavering allegiance to what matters, you build not only character, but a life immune to the corrosion of convenience. Chapter 5. You are not your failures. Failure is inevitable. We will all make decisions we regret, saying the wrong words in a critical moment, trusting someone unworthy of our confidence, misjudging a situation despite good intentions. Yet while mistakes will happen, how we interpret and respond to them determines whether they define us or instruct us. As Epictetus taught, it is not events that disturb people, but their judgments about them. Failure, then, is not the enemy. The belief that failure is final is the true adversary. Failure as instruction, not identity. When you stumble, you face a crossroads. Will you allow that misstep to become part of your identity, or will you mine it for wisdom? The Stoic views failure as feedback, a teacher dressed in uncomfortable attire. Viktor Frankl, reflecting on his experience in concentration camps, observed that everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Even when external outcomes collapse, your response remains within your domain. Seeing failure as an instructional guide preserves your dignity and empowers growth. The judgment trap: most people conflate "I failed at X" with "I am a failure." This identity trap turns a momentary misstep into an all-encompassing verdict. Seneca reminded us, "No man is crushed by misfortune unless he has first been deceived by prosperity." When we bask in success, we may over-identify with our achievements. When we falter, we may over-identify with our faults. Both extremes hinge on self-worth tied to outcomes. The Stoic anchor, by contrast, is character, unchanged by a single victory or defeat. Detour, not dead end. Imagine life as a long journey. Through varied terrain, a failure is a blocked path, not a collapse of the entire route. You can choose to turn back or to navigate around the obstacle. Aristotle, in his discussion of moral development, noted that excellence is not reached in a single leap, but through persistent effort over many trials. Each failure chips away ignorance, carving space for insight. The path to mastery is not a straight line, but a winding road, transforming shame into resolve. Shame paralyzes, resolve mobilizes. When we judge ourselves harshly for mistakes, we reinforce patterns of avoidance and fear. Martha Nussbaum, a philosopher who examines emotion, argues that shame can erode one's sense of agency, turning a person into a passive object of judgment. The Stoic remedy is radical self-compassion paired with accountability. Acknowledge the error without wallowing in self-loathing. Extract its lesson, and move forward deliberately. Your response defines. Epictetus emphasized that freedom arises from controlling our own judgments. After a failure, you can choose blame, denial, resentment, or you can choose inquiry and adaptation. A blacksmith tests the strength of his steel by hammering it. The very blows that could break a lesser metal forge a stronger blade. By welcoming failure as a refining force, you transform setbacks into catalysts for character. Practical exercises. Failure. Write a letter addressed to your future self describing a recent failure. What happened, why it hurt, and what you learned. Seal it and read it only after a defined interval, 1 month or 3, so you can track how your perspective has evolved. Post-mortem analysis: objectively dissect a mistake as if assisting someone else. What factors led to the error? Which aspects were under your control and which were not? What concrete adjustments will you make next time? Compassionate reflection: in moments of self-reproach, pause and ask, am I speaking to myself as a judge or as a mentor? If in judgment, reframe the inner critic's tone into one of supportive coaching. Reframing failure philosopher. Alain de Botton suggests treating our inner lives like valuable poems. Imperfections can become unique features, rather than flaws to be erased. When you reframe a failure as part of your evolving narrative, it loses its power to shame and gains the power to teach. Resilience through repetition. True resilience is not bouncing back once, it's the readiness to bounce back every time. Frankl wrote that, "What is to give light must endure burning." Each setback you endure without surrender adds a layer of resilience. Over time, you cultivate what the Stoics call indifference toward external circumstances. Not apathy, but equanimity rooted in knowing you will rise again, no matter how hard you fall. From regret to refinement. Regret serves no purpose unless it refines your future conduct. The Stoic practice of evening reflection helps here. Review your day without judgment. Note where regret lingers, then translate it into a commitment for tomorrow. If you spoke harshly, vow to choose patience next time. If you avoided a necessary conversation, prepare to face it promptly. These small resolutions accumulate, steering your course away from repeating mistakes. Hold failure with compassion, not chains. Imagine holding a hot coal to warm your hand. You risk burning yourself more than anyone else. Clinging to past mistakes similarly inflicts ongoing injury. The Stoic approach is to hold failure with honesty, acknowledging its reality, yet to release it from the hand of shame. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is refusing to let the past dictate your present worth. The power of yet. Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset underscores the power of adding yet. I failed at this task, yet. That simple conjunction opens space for possibility. The Stoic might say, I did not meet my standard today, yet I will apply what I learned tomorrow. This linguistic shift moves you from a fixed to a dynamic identity, from being a failure to becoming someone who learns from failure. You are not the sum of your missteps. You are the sum of how you respond to them. Failure becomes part of your story not when it darkens your identity, but when it brightens your understanding. By treating mistakes as instructors, reframing shame into resolve and forging resilience through repeated return, you transform each setback into a stepping stone. In this way, failure loses its finality and becomes instead a necessary passage on the path of self-mastery. Remember, the Stoic does not measure life by flawless days but by unbroken commitment to rise again. Chapter 6. The Art of Returning to Yourself. No one sustains perfect alignment. Even the most disciplined can lose their way, as a sailor drifts off course without frequent checks of the compass. The Stoic does not cling to an illusion of flawlessness. Instead, they cultivate the skill of returning, again and again, to their essential self. This is the art of re-anchoring, of calling back what has wandered, not with self-flagellation, but with gentle resolve. Recognizing the drift life offers endless invitations to abandon your center. An argument ignites passion you didn't intend. A craving disguises itself as need. A distraction seduces you away from presence. These are not moral catastrophes but crossroads, and if you pass them unawares, you accumulate distance from your true self. Michel de Montaigne wrote, "Each man bears the whole form of the human condition. Yet too often we bear only fragments, dictated by circumstance rather than by chosen principle." The first step in returning is noticing the drift, signals of disconnection, restlessness or unease without obvious cause, repeated justification of behavior at odds with your values, a quiet sense that something isn't quite right even when life goes smoothly. These signals are gentle alarms, not punishments. They invite you to pause and listen to what the Stoic calls the inner sentinel, the voice of reason and integrity that knows when you've veered off course. Reclaiming personal power, Seneca proclaimed, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power." That power lies in your ability to notice drift and choose to return. When external forces pull you off balance, remember that the only thing you truly govern is your own mind. By reclaiming that governance, you reclaim your center. This is not an act of willful suppression, but an act of compassionate self-leadership, guiding yourself back to clarity without judgment. Creating a return ritual. Rituals are bridges between intention and action. Without them, lofty resolutions evaporate under stress. The Stoic builds simple, reproducible rituals that function as beacons back to self. Choose practices that resonate deeply and can be enacted under any circumstances, standing, in line during a work break, or in the quiet moments before sleep. Examples include anchor. Select a phrase that reminds you of your core, e.g., "This moment is mine," or "Principles over panic." Speak or think it slowly 3 times. Grounding breath. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 2, exhale for 6. Repeat until tension subsides. This breath pattern signals your nervous system to shift from fight or flight toward presence. Journal line. Carry a small notebook. Write 1 sentence. "Right now, I choose," followed by the value or intention you wish to reclaim: courage, clarity, patience. These rituals are not escapes from reality but acts of engagement. grounding you in purpose even amid chaos. Practice them daily in calm periods so they become automatic lifelines when storms arise. Philosophical foundations of return. The concept of return appears in many traditions. Nietzsche's idea of amor fati, loving one's fate, invites us to embrace every experience as part of our path, yet it also implies an active orientation, to love life by continually reorienting ourselves toward what serves our flourishing. Similarly, Søren Kierkegaard emphasized the importance of repetition, not merely repeating actions mechanically, but repeating them with renewed intention, thus regenerating meaning. The Stoic return ritual embodies these insights. It is both acceptance and recommitment, practicing before the crisis. If you wait until the storm hits, it may be too late. Panic will hijack your nervous system long before reason reasserts itself. Therefore, integrate return rituals into everyday life. During a morning coffee, a mid-afternoon pause, or an evening wind down. When the unexpected arrives, your practiced responses will arise naturally, guiding you back to center without requiring monumental effort. The gentle art of self-compassion. Returning is not a chore, but an act of kindness toward yourself. When you notice drift, resist the impulse to criticize. As Thich Nhat Hanh reminds us, feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor. Treat the moment of drift with curiosity. What caused me to veer? What do I need to recalibrate? This compassionate inquiry opens space for growth without the corrosive weight of shame. Building a community of return. While Stoicism emphasizes individual responsibility, you need not practice alone. Share your return rituals with a trusted friend or mentor. Create brief check-ins, 2 sentences about drift and 2 about realignment. Community accountability reinforces commitment and reminds you that returning to yourself is a shared human endeavor, not a solitary ordeal. Measuring progress, not perfection. The art of returning is a lifelong practice, not a one-time achievement. Track your progress through simple metrics. Frequency of return. How often did you enact your ritual this week? Ease of execution. How quickly did you remember and perform the ritual under stress? Quality of reconnection. After returning, did you feel more present, calm, or clear? Celebrate incremental successes. Each intentional return strengthens neural pathways that make future returns easier. The ritual of return in action. Imagine you receive a harsh email criticizing your work. Your first instinct might be defensiveness or anxiety. But because you have practiced your return ritual, you pause, anchor your breath, and silently affirm, I respond with clarity, not reaction. In that moment, you defuse emotional escalation. Choose a thoughtful reply instead of a reactive retort, and preserve your equilibrium. This single act exemplifies the power of return, a small ritual leading to profound composure. The art of returning to yourself transforms drift into opportunity. Each moment of disconnection alerts you to recalibrate. Each ritual anchors you in what endures, your principles, your purpose, your presence. Seneca's counsel rings true. True happiness is to enjoy the present, without anxious dependence upon the future. By mastering the art of returning, you not only survive life's storms but navigate them with poise, reclaiming your center whenever you stray. In this timeless practice, you discover that your inner fortress is not a static monument but a living sanctuary, strengthened through every departure and every return. Chapter 7. The Cost of Pleasing. Everyone you can live to be real or live to be liked, but you cannot do both. In striving to satisfy every expectation, you risk losing the very self you hope to preserve. Søren Kierkegaard observed that, to dare is to lose one's footing momentarily, not to dare is to lose oneself. When you constantly adjust your soul to please, you trade authenticity for temporary approval, and in that exchange your footing on your own identity erodes. Authenticity versus approval. Approval is a powerful lure. We instinctively read smiles and nods as safety signals, and when they fade, we feel exposed. Yet approval is a currency with fluctuating value. It can vanish overnight. The Stoic sees that choosing authenticity, speaking your truth, honoring your values, often means risking disapproval or conflict. As Ralph Waldo Emerson declared, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." Authenticity demands courage. The courage to disappoint. The courage to let some doors close so others can open. The price of pleasing. Everyone may ease immediate tension but carries hidden costs. Compromised values. Continual adjustment to others' desires teaches your mind that your own values are malleable. Over time, you lose clarity about what you genuinely stand for. Emotional exhaustion. Constant performance drains mental and emotional energy. You must remember countless versions of yourself tailored for different audiences, leaving little capacity for genuine presence. Resentment and bitterness. When you forgo your needs and truth for others, you accumulate quiet grievances. These unspoken resentments corrode relationships from within, turning kindness into silent bitterness. Shallow connections. Relationships built on performances lack depth. Others may like your facade, but they rarely connect with your core. True intimacy flourishes only where authenticity abounds. Aristotle asserted that it is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. The Stoic extends this to social demands. You can listen to what others want without surrendering your convictions. Stoic courage in disappointing others. The Stoic recognizes that disappointment is not inherently negative. It can be a catalyst for healthier boundaries. Epictetus taught that we should distinguish between what is under our control, our judgments and actions, and what is not, others' reactions. When you disappoint someone by honoring your values, you risk their disapproval, but you do not yield your freedom. Their reaction belongs to them. Your integrity remains yours. Consider the example of refusing to engage in gossip. You may face awkward silence or subtle social pressure. Yet by saying, "I'd rather not discuss someone who isn't here to speak for themselves," you uphold respect and honesty. The discomfort of disappointing others is brief. The cost of betraying your principles lingers indefinitely. The boundaries of self-respect. Setting firm boundaries is not selfish. It is an act of self-respect that benefits all relationships. Confucius taught that virtue is not left to stand alone. He who practices it will have neighbors. When you model integrity, you invite others to do the same. Boundaries communicate what you value, allowing relationships to settle into genuine reciprocity rather than covert transaction. To clarify your boundaries, identify needs. Note situations where you feel depleted. These signal where boundaries are weak or absent. Articulate limits. Define what behaviors you will not tolerate. Interrupting, dismissive language, undue pressure. Enforce consistently. When a boundary is crossed, respond promptly and respectfully. "I need us to speak calmly," or "I'm unavailable after 7 p.m. Each respectful enforcement of a boundary teaches others how to treat you and teaches you how to honor yourself. Practical exercise. The difficult no. Choose a scenario. Identify one request you find hard to refuse. Extra work, a social invitation, an emotional favor. Draft your response. Write a concise, polite refusal that references your boundary and, where appropriate, offers an alternative. Example: "I appreciate you thinking of me, but I can't take on additional tasks this week. Perhaps colleague X might help." Rehearse aloud. Practice delivering your no with a calm tone. Notice any internal resistance and remind yourself, choosing integrity outweighs fleeting discomfort. Implement and reflect. Use the refusal in real life, then journal the outcome and your emotional response. Philosophical perspectives on boundary setting. Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative instructs us to act only on maxims we would will universal. If you would not want to be overburdened continually for the sake of others' convenience, then you must refuse to overburden yourself. Jean-Paul Sartre remarked that you are free and that nothing can hinder this freedom but yourself. When you yield to people-pleasing impulses, you abdicate your freedom, allowing others to shape your actions and self-image. Resisting approval addiction. Approval can become addictive. Like any reward, the brain craves its dopamine surge. To break the cycle, mindful withdrawal. When you notice the urge to please, pause and observe the craving. Name it. Ah, I want approval. Naming reduces its power. Value reorientation. Remind yourself of your most cherished principle at that moment: honesty, kindness, autonomy, and choose it over the fleeting approval. Celebrate small wins. Each time you opt for authenticity over acquiescence, acknowledge the victory. Over time, integrity becomes more rewarding than any external accolade. The liberation of disapproval. Ironically, disapproval can be liberating. Kierkegaard suggested that the crowd is untruth. When you step out of the crowd's script, you step into your own story. Disapproval signals that you have disturbed someone's expectations, often a sign that you have reclaimed your authenticity. While not every disapproval is valuable, discerning when to heed it and when to dismiss it is part of Stoic maturity. The cost of pleasing everyone is far steeper than the discomfort of disappointing a few. Authenticity demands that you choose your own compass over the many sextants offered by society. By setting clear boundaries, practicing the difficult no, and embracing the occasional disapproval as confirmation of your autonomy, you safeguard your character. In doing so, you forge relationships rooted in respect rather than convenience and cultivate a freedom that no amount of applause can match. Remember, living truly authentic is not an act of defiance, but a declaration of self-respect, a Stoic commitment to remain unbent in a world that constantly asks you to fold. Chapter 8. The danger of self-forgetting. You are not merely a body or a set of roles. You are an inner world of thoughts, dreams, and values. Yet in the rush to meet obligations, at work, in relationships, in service to others, it is all too easy to neglect that inner life. Jiddu Krishnamurti warned, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. When you sacrifice your own needs and inner clarity for external demands, you risk falling ill in spirit, even as you excel in action." Inner life and self-awareness. Your mind is a sanctuary or a storm, depending on what you allow to dwell there. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If every conversation, image, or opinion you encounter goes unexamined, your mind absorbs them unquestioningly, shaping your identity around others' noise. Self-awareness, the practice of observing your own thoughts and feelings, acts as a filter that preserves your inner world. Without it, you drift, responding to external currents rather than to your own compass. Risks of overservice, altruism, and duty are virtues, up to a point. When you constantly defer your needs to serve, resentment builds beneath the surface. Confucius taught that he who wishes to secure the good of others has already secured his own. Yet if you give without replenishing your own reserves, you deplete both. You become less effective to others, as exhaustion replaces empathy, and genuine generosity gives way to weariness. The Stoic recognizes that caring for the self is not selfish but essential. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. Filtering influences, modern life inundates you with stimuli, social media feeds, news alerts, unsolicited advice. Each input competes for your attention and shapes your worldview. As Seneca advised, associate with people who are likely to improve you. But first, associate with your own mind. Curate what you allow in. Question news stories before accepting them. Evaluate others' opinions before adopting them. And be wary of repetitive internal chatter that echoes unhelpful beliefs. By actively choosing your mental diet, you protect your peace and preserve the clarity needed for principled action. Solitude as reconnection. Solitude is not isolation. It is intentional quiet time to meet yourself without distraction. Thoreau observed at Walden Pond that the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. He found salvation in deliberate aloneness, where he could think deeply, write honestly, and reconnect with his true purpose. The Stoic mirrors this practice through daily or weekly solitude rituals, unplugged walks, silent mornings, journal sessions, where the only voice you hear is your own unfiltered. In these moments, you replenish your inner reserves and recalibrate your priorities. The philosophical mandate to remember yourself. Montaigne wrote, "To philosophize is to learn how to die." Yet true philosophy is also learning how to live. It demands, know yourself, guard your mind, nurture your soul. Without self-remembering, philosophy becomes empty rhetoric. The Stoic commitment to self-care is thus a philosophical imperative. You preserve the ground from which all right action grows. Practical exercises. Mindful morning check-in upon waking, sit for 2 minutes, and note 3 internal states: gratitude, concern, aspiration. This identifies your starting point before external demands flood in. Input audit for 1 day. Track every major media or conversational input. At day's end, ask, which inputs uplifted my clarity, which clouded my mind? Adjust habits accordingly. Weekly solitude slot. Block a 30-minute window each week for undisturbed reflection. No phone, no agenda, just you, a journal, and open awareness. Observe how your thoughts and values align or drift. Protecting your inner sanctuary. Imagine your mind as a garden. Without attentive weeding and selective planting, invasive species choke out the flowers. Similarly, without self-awareness and solitude, intrusive thoughts and compulsive reactions overrun your best intentions. Protecting your inner sanctuary means practicing vigilance over what you allow to grow. Nourish virtues such as patience, clarity, and kindness. Uproot resentment, envy, and distraction. Balancing service and self-care. The Stoic ideal is not selfishness, but sustainable service. As Epictetus taught, first learn the meaning of what you say and then speak. Begin by learning the needs of your own mind. Only then can you authentically serve others without losing yourself. If a friend needs support, offer it from a position of replenished strength rather than depleted obligation. If a project demands your time, allocate periods of solitude so you return to duties with clarity, not exhaustion. Self-forgetting is a slow erosion, often unnoticed until you awaken in a life that feels hollow. Conversely, self-remembering, through awareness, curation of inputs, and disciplined solitude, is a restoration, pulling you back into genuine alignment. The philosopher's life, as Montaigne and Marcus Aurelius reveal, is grounded in continuous self-reconnection. By protecting your inner world, you ensure that every action, every word, and every relationship flows from a place of integrity rather than vacancy. Guard your sanctuary, tend your garden. Remember who you are so fully that no external pressure can make you lose sight of your center. Chapter 9. Your life is your practice. Stoicism is not a weekend retreat or an academic exercise. It is a way of living every moment as if it were a classroom. The Stoic does not compartmentalize philosophy for emergencies. They carry it into the mundane as readily as into the critical. As Seneca declared, philosophy takes you by the hand and leads you from one joy to another, unhindered by any angry fortune. That hand extends into every aspect of daily life, transforming ordinary actions into deliberate practice. Stoicism, as daily living philosophy that remains theoretical, is decoration. Philosophy that anchors your choices is transformation. Marcus Aurelius admonished himself, "Let not your mind run on what you lack as much as on what you have already." He applied this not in grand proclamations but in the minutiae. How he spoke to household staff, how he endured discomfort on military campaigns, how he managed sorrow in private. To the Stoic, each breath, each conversation, each decision is an opportunity to live one's values. Virtue in everyday actions. Virtues are not abstract ideals but practical tools. Aristotle taught that we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. Stoic virtues, courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom become habits only through repeated use. Courage in the small moments. When your heart races at the thought of speaking up, you practice courage by voicing a respectful dissent. Each small act of bravery supplies moral muscle for greater trials. Temperance in temptation. Faced with an extra slice of cake or a tempting impulse to gossip, you exercise moderation. By declining once, you train restraint until it becomes second nature. Justice in daily interactions. Fairness can be practiced simply by giving credit when due, listening fully before passing judgment, or refusing to spread rumors. These micro-choices reinforce a just character. Wisdom in reflection. Pausing before action to consider consequences, seeking multiple perspectives before concluding, and learning from mistakes all cultivate practical wisdom. By embedding virtue into routine behavior, the Stoic ensures that character remains steadfast under pressure. Real-life Stoicism. The Stoic does not wait for crises to practice virtue. The grocery line, the inbox full of urgent emails, the family dinner, these are arenas for Stoic engagement. At each moment you can ask, what virtue does this situation call for? How might I act to honor my principles here? Consider a delay in traffic. Instead of succumbing to irritation, you choose patience, transforming external frustration into an exercise of equanimity. Or during a contentious meeting, rather than retaliating, you apply justice by giving space for opposing views. These real-life applications demonstrate that Stoicism is not escapism, but immersion in the world with disciplined clarity. Reflection and refinement. Deliberate reflection is the engine of progress. After any significant interaction or at days, and pause for a virtue check. Identify a moment of strength. What virtue did I embody? How did it feel in mind and body? Identify a moment of weakness. Where did I default to reactivity or convenience? Which virtue was absent? Extract a lesson. What adjustment will I make next time? How can I rehearse the virtuous response? Marcus Aurelius kept his private journal not to chronicle triumphs but to confront failings and solidify new commitments. Your own reflections need not be lengthy. 2 or 3 sentences suffice to convert experience into lasting insight. Tools for daily practice. Virtue calendar. Each day, focus on a single virtue. Label Monday courage, Tuesday temperance, and so on. Reflect nightly on how you practice that virtue. Stoic mantra. Choose a short phrase. Act with integrity, respond with calm, serve with justice, and repeat it silently before decisions or under stress. Accountability. Partner. Share your daily reflections with a trusted friend. Offer brief updates on successes and challenges, and support each other's growth. These tools embed Stoicism into your environment, making practice unavoidable rather than optional. Philosophical foundations. Immanuel Kant's notion of the good will underscores that moral worth lies not in outcomes but in acting from duty. The Stoic mirrors this. Value is found not in applause but in right action itself. Similarly, Nietzsche's concept of becoming who you are resonates. Life is a continuous forging of character through practice, trial, and repetition. By living Stoicism rather than studying it, you enact Kant's duty and Nietzsche's self-creation in every moment. Overcoming obstacles to practice. Obstacles are inevitable. Fatigue, distraction, social pressure. The Stoic anticipates these and builds resilience through small wins. If meditation feels tedious, start with a 1-minute pause. If journaling seems onerous, write just a single sentence. Consistency matters more than duration. As Lao Tzu wrote, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Each modest act of practice lays the path to deeper transformation. Your life is not a series of isolated events, but a continuous practice in becoming. Every interaction, every challenge, every quiet moment is a brushstroke in your moral portrait. By treating daily living as your workshop, where virtues are tools to hone your character, you ensure that philosophy remains alive and operative. In this ongoing endeavor, you do not merely survive life's vicissitudes, you engage them as a craftsman engages raw materials, shaping them with discipline, purpose, and presence. Through this lifelong practice, you embody Stoicism not as theory, but as the vibrant reality of a life well lived. Chapter 10. Never lose yourself. You began this journey with the clarity of your inner fortress, the conviction that your true self lay beneath the swirling demands of the world. Yet even the staunchest foundations require constant tending. As Heraclitus declared, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, and neither does anyone remain the exact person they were yesterday." Life's currents shift us, sometimes imperceptibly, toward new roles, fresh pressures, unforeseen temptations. The Stoic commitment is not to resist all change, but to ensure that every transformation carries the essence of who you are, never burying your center under layers of compromise. Daily discipline of alignment. Never losing yourself is not a one-time vow. It is a series of daily disciplines. As Montaigne urged, to philosophize is to learn how to die and how to live fully. Each morning, reaffirm your non-negotiables in a brief reflection. Honesty, courage, compassion, justice. Let these principles color every decision, no matter how trivial. Each evening, audit your day. Identify moments of drift, times you yielded to reactive impulses, and moments of return, times you paused, remembered, and realigned. This nightly ritual acts as a compass recalibration, guiding you back to true north. Recognizing subtle erosion drift is subtle. It can look like allowing impatience in traffic, unkind words in private, or silent acquiescence to a small injustice. Over days and weeks, these small concessions aggregate into unfamiliar patterns. Kierkegaard warned of losing oneself quietly, unnoticed until the void feels cavernous. The Stoic trains a vigilant awareness for these erosions. Signals such as chronic distraction, unexplained restlessness, or diminishing outrage at wrongs prompt immediate return rituals, grounding breaths, anchor phrases, or solitude to halt. The slide and reclaim presence. Growth versus betrayal change is necessary for flourishing, but growth that sacrifices authenticity becomes betrayal. Nietzsche's injunction to become who you are underscores that evolution must emerge organically from your core, not imposed by external expectations. When you adopt every new trend or chameleon-like role to appease others, you risk mutating into someone unrecognizable. Instead, let growth feel like a homecoming, expanding your capacities while reinforcing your character, like a tree extending new branches without uprooting its trunk. Intentional living, to live without losing yourself, is to move through the world with intention. Socrates' declaration, "The unexamined life is not worth living," reminds us that awareness is the price of authenticity. In every context, at work, in relationships, online, you can ask, am I acting from my compass or reflexively? Intentional living means refusing autopilot. It means curating your schedule to include meaningful pauses, choosing conversations that nourish rather than deplete, and declining invitations that compromise your values. Each choice becomes a brick in the pathway of your authentic story. The power of as if. William James proposed acting as if you were already the person you aspire to become. When you habitually live as if, you embody courage, compassion, and integrity. You internalize those qualities. In moments of doubt, speak the language of your highest self. I act with honesty. I respond with calm, even before feeling it fully. Over time, the phrase blossoms into reality, anchoring you in your most authentic nature and resisting the sway of external storms. Cultivating a personal code, your written manifesto of principles, serves as an unwavering reference. Marcus Aurelius carried succinct reminders in his journal. Modern Stoics can craft a concise declaration, 4 or 5 core tenets that encapsulate your identity. Post it where you'll see it daily, on your mirror, in your planner, as a phone wallpaper. These words become a steady drumbeat, reinforcing your center whenever the world's cacophony grows loud. Rituals of return. Even as your life evolves, maintain return rituals that never grow obsolete. Your anchor phrase, your grounding breath, your evening audit, they are timeless tools. When a new season arrives, a promotion, a move, a relationship shift, these rituals adapt to fresh contexts without losing their essence. They form a lineage of practice, a thread weaving through the fabric of each chapter in your life. Embracing lone moments. There will be seasons when you feel isolated, when your principles clash with the prevailing current and the crowd moves on without you. Rather than despair, view solitude as validation that you stand by your truth. Emerson observed that to be great is to be misunderstood. In these solitary junctures, remember that true belonging is found not in acceptance by all, but in fidelity to self. Solitude becomes fertile ground for deeper alignment, fortifying you for subsequent engagement. Lifelong pilgrimage, your Stoic journey does not conclude. It unfolds continually. Each day offers fresh opportunities to lose yourself in distraction or to find yourself in deliberate practice. At life's end, you will not measure success by achievements or accolades, but by the integrity with which you inhabited every moment, by the authenticity that remained unshaken, come what may. As Seneca counseled, begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life. Each sunrise is a new birth, each sunset a chance to return. Final reflection. Never losing yourself is not a steadfast stance against all currents, but a committed practice of returning to your center whenever you drift. It is the synthesis of daily disciplines, vigilant awareness, and intentional choices. It honors the delicate balance between change and continuity, growth and authenticity. Above all, it is the Stoics' ultimate victory, not to conquer the world, but to ensure the world never conquers the self. Hold that unshakable core as your guiding light, and you will navigate life's ever-shifting landscape with unwavering presence, true to yourself and worthy of each passing moment. Across these 10 chapters, we've mapped a path from restless reaction to deliberate resilience. We began by uncovering the unshakable core within, your true self, beyond titles and possessions. We then explored how to remain centered in life's storms, resisting the pull of approval and refusing to barter authenticity for applause. We recognized failure as a guide rather than a verdict, learned the art of returning when drift sets in, and honed the courage to disappoint others rather than betray ourselves. We guarded against self-forgetting through disciplined solitude and mindful curation of our inner lives. We framed every moment, mundane or monumental, as an arena for virtuous practice and affirmed that the ultimate measure of a life well lived is never to have been conquered by it. Stoicism, far from dogma, is a living tradition, a daily rehearsal, in presence, integrity, and aligned action. Seneca reminds us that true happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. Epictetus taught that our freedom lies in mastering our judgments. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated that even an emperor must continually return to his guiding principles. Their collective wisdom urges us not merely to study philosophy but to embody it. Let each morning be a pledge to uphold your non-negotiables. Let each evening's reflection serve as a compass recalibration. When the world's winds howl, anchor yourself in the practices you've built. The grounding breath, the courageous no, the heartfelt failure letter, the silent journal entry, the ritual of return. In these small acts lies the power to preserve your essence. Never lose yourself. Cultivate your inner fortress. Embrace life's challenges as invitations to deepen your practice. And in doing so, you will discover that real victory is not conquering circumstances, but remaining whole, your own steadfast anchor, no matter where the currents carry you.